Mission City.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Mission City. So good to be together. Like Sean said, thanks for fighting through the Boston Marathon to get here. Your endurance will pay off, I promise. So glad to have you. Hey, if you're new, or maybe this is your, like Aaron said, second, third time, we just want you to know that we think it's really special that you showed up. If this is really new to you, we know that new things can be intimidating sometimes. It can be hard to show up, and especially if you're flying solo, that can be even more intimidating, and especially if you're coming to a church because you're not sure what you're walking into or what these people are like, and the fact that you just walked through the door for us is a massive win today. So thank you for taking that chance. Thank you for being here, and I believe, and this may not surprise you, as a pastor, I believe that church at its best is community at its best. That you won't find a better community. When the church is clicking on all cylinders, this is the best place to be. You can find it in different parts and different pockets of the city, but when God brings a group of people together from a bunch of different backgrounds and a bunch of different life experiences, and we all come together and call each other one under the banner of Jesus, it's a big deal. And so I really hope that you know that you're here for a reason. It was not an accident, and we're glad you're here today. Now, like my friend Aaron said, we are starting a brand new series for the month of November called Different. Now, we are going to be hanging out in one book of the Bible called 1 Peter. So if you have a Bible or a Bible app and you want to join me, you can just drop a bookmark right there because we're going to be living in that one book of the Bible for the next 4 weeks. Now, for some of you, that's really exciting. And then for others of you that maybe are new to this, you're like, wait a minute, a whole month in one book of the Bible, that sounds so boring. And I get that. I understand why you might think that. But what we believe is that actually this has so much to say to us here and today. I know the Bible gets a bad rap sometimes. Like, man, it was written so long ago. It was on the other side of the world. What could it possibly have to do with us? And I know that we like to think that we're special. But believe it or not, people have been people for the last ever. Okay? We're the same people. So yes, we have the internet now, but also we've always been selfish. Yes, we drive cars now, but also it's really hard to stay healthy. And so what we're going to see is Peter speak into our lives from 2,000 years ago directly and relevantly, and it's going to be a blast. And so the title of the series is called Different, because what we're going to explore is how Christians can be different in a really good and positive way in our culture. But you and I are humans, and so our tendency and our temptation is to do the exact opposite thing. Our temptation, my temptation, is to blend in, not stand out. I want to fit in. I don't want to be different. So our family, we moved here 4 years ago from a different part of the country. And one of our first goals was to learn what it means to be local. All right, what does it mean to be local? What do the locals do? Where do they go? How do they fit in? And so we just adopted a handful of local behaviors so that we could fit in better in Santa Barbara. So for instance, we just started showing up 10 minutes late to everything. All right, 10 minutes late. It was just like the natural time is a relative concept in Santa Barbara. All right, there are no boundaries. There are no rules. And even though we were 10 minutes late, somehow we were still the first ones there. Okay, we just couldn't get late enough to fit in. It's hard to fit in that way. When we would have guests from out of town, we learned that you're supposed to apologize when it's 65 and not 72, okay? There is a cloud in the sky, and I am so sorry, okay? That's what you do. When people come visit you, you apologize when it's anything less than perfect. We started getting really snooty about the beaches that we would spend time in, okay? That's kind of part of the deal. Like, why would you go to that beach? Do you want tar on your feet? Why would you go to that beach? Do you want dogs around you? Why would you go to that beach? There's no parking there. And we got really snooty about the beaches because that's what the locals do. And then finally, we just stopped eating at all chain restaurants, all right? If there's more than one of those, we don't go, okay? Locals only. We don't do any of the chain restaurants. I can proudly say that we've lived here for 4 years, and it wasn't until this week that we ate at the Chili's in Goleta, okay? And only because my very pregnant wife wanted chips and salsa and ranch, and so I said, yes, ma'am, we will go to Chili's, okay? We broke the chain restaurant rule just because she's pregnant. It's what locals do. You fit in. You want to blend in. But the challenge is that in following Jesus, there's going to be these moments where you're just going to stand out. It's going to be different. And you're going to be friends differently, and you're going to spend your money differently, and you're going to use your time differently. And there's just going to be these moments where you're at a party with other people and you're having this conversation. You'll have this out-of-body experience of like, why are you the way that you are? Because I don't feel that way. I don't think that way. I don't talk that way. I don't even want to live that kind of life. But the challenge is that Christians, those that claim to follow Jesus, have certainly been labeled different in our culture, but not always in the good kind of way. Sometimes different in the weird kind of way. Sometimes in the different of like, I can't even talk to you kind of way. Sometimes different in the I'm going to build a bubble that's so tight around me that I don't even interact with the outside world kind of way. And so what we want to explore over the next few weeks is what is Peter talking about when he says live differently? What is the fuel that makes us want to do that? And then what's the reward at the end of it all for living the way that Jesus has called us to live? Different in a world that seems to be asking us to all do the same thing. And again, in a room like this, with this many people, not all of us are on the same page when it comes to what we believe. Some of us have more experience than others. Some of us have deeper convictions than others. And we always know that in any given Sunday, there's probably someone here that's like, I don't even know that this is for me. I'm not even sure I believe all this stuff. I'm not even sure that I agree with you. And if that's you, man, we're so glad you're here. And we want you to know that every Sunday, this is a place that you can come and ask all of your questions and be honest about your doubts and air out anything that you're wrestling with. But here's my guess, is that if you're not yet sure what you believe about God, what you believe about Jesus, you are looking for something different. That when you look around the culture around you, you're just like, hey, that option that I've been presented just doesn't seem great. Like my political party being my personality, that doesn't seem like a great idea. My sexuality being my entire identity, I don't know that I want to go down that route either. My career ladder that's in front of me being all that I think about, I'm not sure that I want that life either. I'm looking for something different. And again, I just want to be honest, all my cards on the table, I'm a pastor. I believe that Jesus is the best way, that he's got something for you that no one else does. And if you take him seriously, it could genuinely change your life, all right? So that's enough preamble. Let's jump in. 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. I'm just warning you, we're not going to get very far. We're going to read 4 verses today, all right? That's as far as we're going to get because there's a lot to talk about. 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. It's going to be on the screens next to me. Here we go. It says, this letter is from Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ. I'm writing to God's chosen people who are living as foreigners in the provinces of Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. God the Father knew you and chose you long ago, and his Spirit has made you holy. As a result, you have obeyed him and have been cleansed by the blood of Jesus Christ. May God give you more and more grace and peace. All right, let's pause there. So anytime that we read the Bible, it's really important for us to understand the context in which it's written. The Bible is this accumulation of multiple books, and all of them have a particular genre, have a particular author, and have a particular audience. Okay? Written by someone to a group of people in a particular way. One of the best ways I've ever heard it explained to me is that imagine you're scrolling through your Twitter feed, your Facebook feed, and you come across a news article that says, lions devour rams. Okay? Depending on the website that you would click on, that means very different things. So for instance, if you're reading a sports website, that means that the Detroit Lions inexplicably and miraculously have beat the LA Rams. All right, I don't know how it happened, but it happened, and it's front news page. Now, if you're reading a science website, that's a very different experience. Somehow, some lions and some rams were in the same place, and the lions devoured the rams. All right, 2 very different outcomes. You have to understand the source in which you're reading. And so this guy, Peter, he's an apostle of Jesus. He's one of Jesus' original 12 disciples. Peter was the loudmouth. He was the zealot. He was incredibly passionate about what he believed. No one had higher highs and no one had lower lows than Peter. And next week, we're going to talk a lot about how his personal story shapes what he writes in his letter. But as for today, we need to know that he's writing to a group of people that grew up Jewish, but were now following Jesus. Obviously, they were living in different neighborhoods. They had kind of spread out, and they had grown up in a religious environment to where they were doing the synagogue thing, they were doing the Jewish thing. They had just grown up with all of that, but then they had a life-changing experience with Jesus, and now that made them different. All the familiar trappings of a Jewish upbringing was gone. All the community and all the relationships, it had changed. All the people that they had grown up with, well, now they're worshiping Jesus in a very different way, and that made them different. And as you can imagine, some of you don't even have to use your imagination. That's your story. So you grew up in an environment very different than the one you're doing right now. Maybe you didn't grow up in a religious household. Maybe you didn't grow up with any kind of faith at all. And now that you are trying to follow Jesus, you find that some of those really important relationships to you are just now different. Maybe you were running with a particular friend group before you met Jesus, and now things are different. Maybe in your office, it's different. And so what Peter has to say to these people is still incredibly relevant to us. And he's trying to encourage them by telling them, here is the source of our hope. If you want to know how to live a different life, it comes from this. And I want you to pay attention to these next two verses, because if you have ever been looking for a succinct explanation of the Christian faith, Peter's about to give it to you. He's about to explain the bedrock of Christianity in two sentences. You ready? Here we go. 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. Peter says, all praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. It is by his great mercy that we have been born again, because God raised Jesus Christ from the dead. Now we live with a great expectation, and we have priceless inheritance, an inheritance that is kept in heaven for you, pure and undefiled, beyond the reach of change and decay. Okay, so in those two sentences, you were just explained to you the entirety of Christianity. Like if you were having coffee with a friend and they were like, what exactly do you believe? You would just slide these two sentences across the table and say, this is it. And because that is so substantial, we're going to spend the rest of our time breaking it down into some bite-sized pieces so that we can understand how to live this out. Okay? First thing that Peter says is that it was by his great mercy. It was by God's mercy that you and I have everything that we have at all. So there has been this forever debate as to the role of obedience when it comes to following God. Okay, what do you do? How are you supposed to live as a follower of God? And there's a pretty good chance, because your story's like mine, that somewhere someone along the way told you that Christianity or belief or faith at all is basically a list of rules. Right? You do this, you don't do this. You say this, you don't say that. You go to this party, you definitely go to that party. You date these kind of people, you definitely don't date those kind of people. And it's right or wrong, do the rules, and eventually, if you can earn enough frequent flyer miles, God will fly you to heaven at the end of the life, okay? That's the whole deal of it. And what it is a suggestion that obedience, your ability to obey the rules, are the thing that earns you favor in God's life. It earns you favor in God's heart. It's the thing that earns you your home in that eternal resting place. But what Peter is suggesting is he's saying, actually, obedience is a response to God's mercy. It's not what we use to earn God's mercy. It's how we respond to the fact that God has already loved us. My wife and I, Trudy, right here, we've been married for 14 years. We dated for 2 years before that. Our relationship could drive if it wanted to, okay? That's how long we've been together. And so in that time, we've loved one another. We've started a family with one another. We've moved across the country. We've done all kinds of things together. Now, every once in a while, I just luckily stumble into moments of selflessness where I serve my wife, all right? I can't claim that it's all the time, but every once in a while, I get it right. Like I mentioned before, she is 18 weeks pregnant today, and so absolutely, I did that. It was me. I did that, all right? Don't ask me how. And so 18 weeks in, okay, and she's also teaching 5th grade at a local elementary school all day long, all right, which means she is tired and sore. And so every once in a while, she will ask me to rub her back, all right, a selfless act of love. So I will rub her back and I will try to make her feel better. And then every once in a while, I will ask her to return the favor. And she does not. Okay? She just doesn't. It's like her hands lose all muscle tone. It's like a massage from a wet noodle. That's basically what it is. And here's a marriage tip, is that if you fail at a task early in marriage, your spouse won't ask you to do it again. And it's a genius way to get out of things that you don't want to do. Okay? So she just chose not to rub my back, and that's just not part of our relationship. Okay. Here's the deal, just airing stuff out. When I serve her, it's not to make her love me. It's because she already does. All right? That's why I love serving her. It's why I like to do good things. It's not to earn her love. Our love is pre-established. Our love has lasted 16 years. I honestly, and to celebrate my wife, I don't ever worry about her stopping loving me. Like that, she's so good at it. She's so committed to it. It's amazing. I'm not doing it because I'm afraid that if I don't give her a back rub, it's over. I'm serving her. I'm trying to love on her because we love one another, not to make her love me. And in the same dynamic is how we follow God. It's not to make God love us that we obey, that we try to follow the rules, that we try to get it right long enough. It's a response to his mercy. And what we're going to talk about for the rest of our time, when we realize just how much God has loved us, obedience is the least we could do. So it says, by his great mercy, and then Peter says that you have been born again. All right? It's by God's mercy that we've been born again. Now, born again is a phrase that entered the popular culture lexicon probably like in the 50s and 60s. There was this really famous guy named Billy Graham, and he would pack out these stadiums and have these revivals, and he would call people to respond to become born again. And then that became like a category of people, born-again Christians. Maybe you've heard that before, and that can kind of mean all kinds of different things. Billy didn't make that up. He's referring to a conversation that Jesus had with a religious leader named Nicodemus. And Nicodemus was Jewish. He had it all together. He was really, really good at it. But Jesus said, if you want to follow God, you will have to become born again. To which Nicodemus says, well, how can I get back into my mother's womb? To which Jesus says, no, dummy. All right, no, you don't do that. Jesus didn't say that. I would have said that. Jesus is much nicer than me. He says, no, man, it's about being a fresh start. It's a clean slate. It's starting all over. Like when you begin to follow Jesus, you have a new beginning. See, when you and I were born and we were held in the hands and arms of our parents, it was like nothing but possibilities. And I've experienced that 3 times, about to experience it again. You hold this baby and you're like, man, I don't know who this person's going to become. I don't know what their relationships are going to be like. I don't know what their personality is going to be. I don't know what they'll end up doing for a living. It's just a fresh start. And Jesus says, when you come to life-changing faith, when you trust that God is who he says he is and will do what he says he will do, it is a fresh start. Here's how Paul puts it in 2 Corinthians 5. He says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone and the new is here. It's totally fresh. See, following Jesus isn't just this like costume that we put on top of our old self. It's a completely new start. He says it's by his great mercy that we have been born again. But the question is, well, how does that work? Like, does God just wave his magical forgiveness wand and abracadabra? It never happened. In fact, here's what the Bible clearly states. It's that every single one of us, every person in this room, every person running down State Street, everybody in this city, everybody in the world has fallen short of the standard that God set. The word for that is sin. And every single one of us have done it. And because God is so holy, because God is so perfect, he can't be around that, and it put distance between us and God that we couldn't close. Not amount of good works, not amount of money given, no amount of prayers prayed could possibly close that gap. We had nothing we could do. And instead of just leaving us for dead, God sent his son to be in our place. It was Jesus that faced the punishment that we deserved. The wages of sin are death. We didn't die the death we deserve. I didn't die the death I deserve. And neither did you. It was Jesus in our place. But Jesus didn't not only just die on the cross for our sin, but he was raised again. Peter says it's by his great mercy that we were born again because God raised Jesus from the dead. God raised Jesus from the dead. He paid the price that we deserve to pay and defeated the enemy that you and I could not defeat. He defeated death. He defeated sin. We deserved every single piece of it, but in reality, it was Jesus that took our place. He didn't wave a magic wand and say, don't worry about it. He wasn't that grandfatherly figure that just tussles your hair and says, it's not a big deal. It actually cost Jesus his life. But not only did he die for our sin, but he was raised again, and because of that, here's the final piece. We have a priceless inheritance. We have a priceless inheritance. Jesus made us right with God through his sacrificial death and resurrection. You see, God has one son, one and only son. That's Jesus. The rest of us have been adopted into the family, and now we have the same inheritance that Jesus has. We have the same rights that Jesus has. When God sees us, he sees what Jesus has done. We have a priceless inheritance, one in which we have no business deserving. And so, what you and I have, here's why this makes us different. Here's why this makes us different, is that our inheritance is priceless and secure, and it never had anything to do with what we did in the first place. Our hope is unshakable because it was never dependent on us. Our hope is eternal because it was never dependent on us. Our hope is that the God loved us enough to send his son in our place. And he's prepared a place for us, and it will blow this life away. It's eternal, it's secure, and it's unshakable. The reason that we can be different than the world around us is that our hope for the future doesn't have to do with how well we execute the next week, the next year, or the next decade. Jesus settled it once and for all. Now, that's a big idea. Here's a question that we've been asking pretty much the entire life of Mission City, and it may sound silly at first, but I promise it matters. It goes like this. How does that change my Tuesday at 3 p.m.? Right? Sometimes you come to church and you hear these big ideas about God, and you're like, that's really, really cool. I have no idea how that changes my life. And my suggestion to you is that Tuesday at 3 p.m. is the most normal time ever. Okay? Nothing special has ever happened at Tuesday at 3 p.m. You are not your best Tuesday at 3 p.m. It is the most ordinary moment in your entire life. And so the question is, how should this change the way that I live in my ordinary life? And here's my question for you. What if your hope wasn't circumstantial? What if your hope for tomorrow had nothing to do with the people around you and the way they made you feel? What if your hope for next year had nothing to do with whether you make more money, have more square feet, have more friends, better shape, less weight? What if your hope had literally nothing to do with your circumstances? Because what Jesus did is he came and he eternally secured the hope that we have to where it is unshakable. And here's how it goes. Man, if I could say anything to you, if I could convince you of anything, here's the one sentence I would try. The most important thing about me is what Jesus has done for me. That's it. The most important thing about me is what Jesus has done for me. I'm telling you, there's just no one else that's going to tell you that. There's nothing in the culture that's going to give that to you because you're being constantly told that the most important thing about you is what? The way you look. The most important thing about you is your friend group. The most important thing about you is how many kids you have. The most important thing about you is your paycheck. The most important thing about you is what your political beliefs are. The most important thing about you is your sexuality. You're getting so many messages as to the single most important thing about you. And here's what Jesus says. The most important thing about you is what Jesus has done for you. You don't have to earn your way into God's love. He did that for you. You don't have to settle your eternity. He did that for you. You don't even have to create your own identity. He has done that for you. The most important thing about you is what Jesus has done for you. And even God not only taught us that, but he gave us a reminder. We, every once in a while, will do this thing called communion. And communion is our opportunity to remember what Jesus has done on our behalf. Right now, the experience team is going to come and provide you the elements of communion. And communion is our opportunity to remember. That you're going to get some bread and some juice and a little plastic cup and a plastic sleeve. It's noisy. That's okay. Don't worry about it. It's not you. It's everybody, okay? We're going to take some time to remember and to reflect on what you just heard. And just to simply ask, how would that change my ordinary life? Is it true that the most important thing about me is what Jesus has done for me? And if so, then this is the most important thing that you'll do all week long. Right now, I want to pray for you as you're getting those elements, and then we're just going to give you some time to reflect on what you heard and take the elements in your own time. Will you pray with me? Father, we are grateful that your word is clear, that it's compelling, that it's life-changing. You didn't leave us to figure this out on our own, but you gave us the clarity and the inspiration to follow. God, we want to be different. We're tired of trying to fit in and trying to live the life that other people have sketched out and blend in a world that's demanding uniformity. It's okay to be different, but we want to draw other people in with this unshakable hope that what you did is eternal, what you did is secured, what you did is forever. God, give us the confidence to live that out. Give us the courage to live differently. And let us remember exactly what you did to give us that hope. It's in your good name I pray. Amen. All right. Hey, we want to end today with an announcement as to the future of this church family and where it's headed next. If you're new here, we're really glad you're here. You get a little inside look into some family business, and so just want to bring you up to date. So our family, about 6 years ago, God started stirring our family as to what it would be like to follow his calling on our life. We were in another part of the country. We were surrounded by friends and family, loved the church that we were at. It was truly amazing. And but when God starts getting a hold of your heart, there's really nothing you can do but to go ask and to pray and to see what he has for you next. And so we went on this journey of what would it look like to be a part of a team that started a new church in a place that needed it. And so I didn't know what else to do. I'm not that smart. I just Googled top unchurched cities in America, all right? That was the place I started. And there was a list. And believe it or not, Santa Barbara is in the top 20 of that list. And then it's also in the top 10 of these two other lists called Post-Christian and Never Churched. Basically, to summarize, your coworkers and your neighbors and most of your friends aren't connected to a really healthy church. And I didn't have to tell you that because you live it every single day. And so we thought what we could do is join in with what God is already doing here in Santa Barbara. We love the other churches. We're friends with a lot of the other pastors. We don't want to ever pretend like this is the only thing going on. It's great. But we thought we could come in and hopefully bring in a different expression and all that. But we knew that we didn't want to do it alone. And so I remember very distinctly, I was on an airplane and I was writing a list of everyone in my life that I could imagine starting a church with. And with zero exaggeration, at the very top of the list, out of all the people in my life, was this couple, Sean and Jayla Dilbeck. Sean and Jayla, absolutely, we can love on them, cheer them on. So Sean and Jayla were at that time living in Austin, Texas, and I believe my initiation of the conversation was a text message that said, "Are you Texas forever?" ? And that was it. And I think Sean knew what was up. And so we asked them to pray about it and consider joining us, and inexplicably, they said yes. And so it was the two of our families that in the summer and winter of 2017 moved into Santa Barbara. And I promise, we tried to do the local thing. We coached baseball. We met our neighbors. We made as many friends as we could. And leading up to the launch of Mission City in September of 2018. And what's really special is that after all these years and after parking lots and pandemics, I'm still looking at some of you that were there for the very first service, and that is so special to us. And so we've done everything that we can to serve and to lead and to build. And so the announcement is that about 3 to 4 months ago, our family was pursued by a church in Anaheim, California, to join their teaching team, leadership team, and to help them lead their campuses. And our first response, Judy and I, was like, well, no way. Like, we love the people of Mission City, and what would happen to them? And then over the coming months and weeks, God has led our hearts to know that God loved you way before we ever knew you. And then we asked, well, what about our kids and what about our family? And God again said, God, I knew your family, and I knew this plan long before you ever knew it. And so, as of about a week ago, our family has officially accepted that invitation, and we will be relocating down to Anaheim, California. So, we will finish out the month of November here, and then we will use the month of December and the semester break to relocate down to Orange County. And so, this is a very bittersweet thing. We're very, very excited about what God is leading our family into, believe that there's so many great things, but also we love you. And I'd say that the honor it has been to celebrate with you in the good times has only been trumped by the honor of walking with you in the hard times. Honestly, I don't know that there is a much greater honor than when someone says, I'm struggling and I want your help. I'm struggling and I want your prayer. I don't know where to go next, and I need your guidance. And when you did that for us, it meant that we were real. Like this was actually happening, that life was changing, and we are so grateful. Grateful that you would ever invite us into that. And so, obviously, that leaves some big questions as to like, okay, well then who leads this thing? And so when we knew that this was a possibility in our lives, I alerted Sean and Jayla as quickly as I could and just said, hey, this might be coming. You may want to consider what you want to do. And so as they prayed about it and thought about it, they said, man, we're still here. And we love Santa Barbara, and we love Mission City, and we love the people. And so I get to announce that my friend, Sean, is going to step into the primary leadership role here at Mission City, okay? So absolutely, we should totally celebrate that. Totally celebrate that. Sean, why don't you come on up? I'd love for you to share your heart. Sean is an incredibly gifted leader. He is an awesome person, and honestly, he's one of the best friends in my entire life. And I had this moment where, like, again, I sometimes accidentally start thinking about other people instead of myself. And I had this moment where I was driving in the car, and I thought, I'm so excited to watch my friend lead this church, and he's going to do an incredible job. And so I just wanted you to hear from Sean's heart as to why he said yes to that invitation, and then we'll explain just a few more things. So, Sean, it's yours.
Well, you all need to know that I've had 4 to 6 weeks with this, and you guys just got this. And my initial reaction in hearing this, I promise you, was excitement and how proud I am of these guys. And I would not be here if I didn't love and trust them implicitly. And before I say anything about myself and the future of Mission City, I just want to say thank you for the courage and the vision to say yes to this and for inviting us along. And so, yeah. It was one of the easiest yeses ever for me then. And it was funny when he texted me. He said, "Are you Texas forever?" I was like, "Oh, that's a loaded text." And it was one of the easiest yeses ever to come do this. And 6 weeks ago, when all this started, and we started talking to Jake, and we talked to management team, you guys got to know it was the second easiest yes ever, because all of those things he said are still true. Santa Barbara is still very much disconnected from the hope and the truth of Jesus Christ, and the work here is not done. And God is calling them out and onto something else. And so we very much want to say yes. And so from the very beginning, we started writing what it would look like to start a church. And so Jake and I together sat at a booth in Austin for how long? Eight hours? And I feel like that was the day Mission City was born. And things like for one another and for everyone and for the city, they all hit the paper. And so you guys need to know that what has been true about Mission City will continue to be true about Mission City. We will exist to help people find and follow Jesus, and these values will drive us forward. And so, as I step into this new season and new experience, you need to know that I could not do this without two very special people in my life, and number one is my wife. No one loves Mission City more than Jayla. I promise you that. She is Team Mission City. And so knowing that I would have her support, I think she said, you can go, I'll stay and lead it if you need me to. And so she was like, she's all in. And so it's been so amazing to have her confidence to be right beside me. And then number two, with me moving into this role, leaves a hole in worship. And so I can't completely give it up. Like, I'm still going to lead from time to time. I just love it so much. But man, I am super excited to tell you, with the same kind of confidence that Jake is extending to me, I'm extending to my good friend, Miss Hannah Martin. She's going to step into the role of worship. Yeah. Yeah. She's going to be the face of worship for us here. You guys know Hannah. She is so much more than a worship leader. She has big gifts that God's going to foster, and so I'm super excited to share with you that as well. That's just a quick 30,000-foot view. You guys need to know that at Groups Giving at my house, I'm going to spend just a few minutes. I want us to really hang out, but I'm going to spend just a few minutes unpacking the next 6 to 8 weeks, what they're going to look like. But for now, you guys need to know, easiest yes ever. There's still work to do, and I pray and hope that you'll go with us and move forward as we exist to help people find and follow Jesus.
So one thing that gives us both confidence is that it's never been one person that's been leading this. In fact, we've had a team behind us. It's a church planting organization called the Orchard Group that provide outside leadership and encouragement, resources, and accountability. And so I've invited Brent Storms to come be with you. Brent is the president of Orchard Group. He is the board member that sits on us. He's basically been my boss this whole time. And so Brent just wants to come and share a little bit as to like what does this look like? Is this the first time this has ever happened? Is there any hope for this at all? And Brent's going to be able to tell you his experience and in his expertise in church planning. So please give a big Mission City welcome to Brent Storms.
It's really good to be here again. I'm coming up from Ventura. That's where I live now. And I represent both Orchard Group, which is a church planting organization that helps to start churches across the country and around the world. I've been doing that for 20 years. I also sit on the specific oversight team that has provided support and counsel and encouragement and all kinds of things for Mission City from behind the scenes. That team includes representatives from 5 or 6 partner churches who have invested financially to help Mission City get off to a healthy start. Those representatives serve alongside with the leadership here to make important decisions and make sure things stay on track. And that's not changing with this leadership transition here. That support will still be backing Mission City as long as it's needed. I want to say just a few messages for a few different people here. First of all, Jake and Trudy, thank you so much for what you've done to serve faithfully through a really challenging season. These last 18 months have been more difficult than any of us would have ever imagined. You have amazing gifts. You use them very well. But I'm very excited for you, honestly, about what's ahead. I think God's in it, and I'm thrilled. So, and Sean and Jayla, you two are amazing with your family, the way you have poured yourselves out. Relationally in this church, but also in this community and with all of your friends and neighbors and every contact you have. Nobody ever doubts your heart and soul is in this and has been from the beginning. And I'm delighted to lend whatever support I can to you guys as you lead going forward. So thank you for stepping up and saying yes. Yeah. But a reminder, though, for all of you, this has never been Jake's church or Sean's church. This has always been Jesus's church and your church. We're going to read in a couple weeks in 1 Peter chapter 3 where Peter says, we are all living stones being built into a spiritual house. So it takes all of us doing everything we can to make our contributions. We're all pieces of that spiritual house that God is building through our efforts and through our gifts and through our contributions. And so now more than ever before, it's obvious that it's time for all of us to step up and do what we can. I love seeing Sean step up, and that means that Hannah's stepping up, and that means Hannah's going to leave a gap that somebody else is going to have to step into, and that's just how God works to make these things happen. God chose an unlikely person, even in Peter, who was a fisherman, and unschooled, ordinary men like him that God used to build his church from the very beginning. So this is God's specialty, to take the unexpected, surprises that we experience, the circumstances we couldn't have planned for, and to produce outcomes that are greater than we could ever imagine. I mean, this is what God does at his best. And to your question, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've helped over 100 new churches get started and grow to the place where they're financially independent, have their own leadership teams in place. I've watched this, and no church escapes without some unexpected surprises. I promise you that. And it's God's work that makes it happen. I was a church planter. It started a church in the Boston area in the 1990s. And when that church was 4 years old, I stepped out of that role and into the role that I'm currently in. And I watched as God helped that church exceed far beyond what we had accomplished in those first 4 years, and it continues to exist today. So I'm hopeful. I know today's a sad day, and I would expect it to feel sad for a lot of you, seeing Jake and Trudy and the relationships you've had with them now being altered. But I would invite you, along with me, to remain extremely hopeful about what God has in store for the future of Mission City here in Santa Barbara. So I'm going to pray, and then I'll turn it back over. God, you are good, you are faithful, you are loving, you are wise, and we're counting on all of that right now, as we always do. But in this moment right now, we're trusting that even though things may be a bit unclear for us, we have confidence that you can see this transition through, and you can bring about amazing fruit that we would have never imagined, things that would be even greater than we could conceive. God, I pray for every person who's here who has already been contributing and serving and participating and engaging and inviting and all of those things. I pray that that would continue and that you would show each of us how important our contributions are to the work that you're doing here. May we remain encouraged and hopeful, counting as we are on what you've done to get us to this place and to carry us forward. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Sean. Absolutely. So I know that we've kept you here longer than we normally do, but we really wanted to share this with you. I want you to support Sean and Jayla, love on them, support Hannah, encourage her, and we're excited. We're really excited about what God is going to do and all up and down the coast here in California, all over the world. We don't think he's done yet. So we can't wait to see you next week. Hopefully you will come hang out at Groups Giving this Wednesday. It'll be a great time to hang out. But as for today, you are dismissed. Have a great week.